Well, good evening. Good evening. It's my distinct pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm just very excited about the opportunity to lead off this conference. I have to thank, of course, a few people as well. Many of them were mentioned, but I do want to thank the organizing committee for providing me with an opportunity to be in front of all of you. I was very, very blessed to be at the first conference at St. John's in Portland, Oregon. And one of the things that I have to remember tonight is my dear friend Bishop Athanasios Masaba Kunda, who was at that conference and passed away on January 4th of 2019. I think many of us were touched by his life. But anyway, I needed to mention him, and my thoughts are with him, and my hope is that his prayers are with us. I want to thank the presenters. Over the last 5 months or so, we shared our material with one another, and that influenced the content that I want to share with you tonight. You're going to hear some amazing presenters, and I would encourage you to understand what I have to say. It's a little premature, but nonetheless, as you listen to what I'm saying tonight, I want you to filter it also through what you're going to hear over the next 24 to 36 hours. You know, nobody thanked you yet, but I want to thank you, because without you, without your love for Christ, without your love for His church, what we would like to see happen in our archdiocese isn't possible. I mean, you're busy people, I know that, and you took some time out of your schedules to be here. And I want to thank you for doing that. In a sense, each of you are agents of change that can make possible what we'd like to see happen, of revitalizing and renewing and establishing Christ as the center of people's lives throughout the United States. Now, I must state from the outset that what I'm going to share with you is really just a mere summary or a distillation of many ideas that I have on the topic of parish health. And I'm excited to share these thoughts with you. But as we begin, let me state that what I have to say should be heard, as I mentioned, not only within the context of what our other presenters will give to you, but also within the context of other presentations I've made on this subject. If you haven't yet done it, you need to go back and look at the YouTube videos from the first conference in Beaverton, Oregon. I think you'd be edified. And it'll help you to further contextualize and understand what it is this slate of speakers is going to be talking to you about. There's also, you know, John Maddox and Tonya Maddox over there in the corner with Ancient Faith Radio, and if you haven't yet discovered that resource, you need to. And there are plenty of things on that resource as well about this topic and other topics related to parish growth. Now, as I stand up here tonight and as I begin, I have to say that the older that I get, the more nervous I get in speaking to a group. You know, when you're young, you're dumb, and you think you know more than you do. And the older you get, the more you realize you don't really know much. And so as I stand up here tonight, I realize that I don't know that much, but I can share with you what I've experienced. And what I want to do is I want to give you a platform to move forward in your own learning. Now, the topic is parish health. And my assumption is that some of you know a little bit about parish health. It's a term of art that's being used more and more in various Christian circles about how it is that we go about revitalizing, planting, and growing churches. But I also think that there are many of you who don't know anything about parish health. But I'm certain that all of us tonight would have a hard time articulating in a meaningful way what we mean when we say parish health. So personally, I've been thinking about this idea for several years, and I've become convinced, and maybe I can convince you tonight, that a focus on health and not growth, a focus on health and not outreach, is our path forward. So I'm going to tell you a little story about how I came to this conclusion. And I hope that in the second part of my presentation, after telling you about my journey to understanding parish health, I'll not only define it for you, but give you some context so that you can apply these same ideas back in your own communities. You know, about 13 years ago, I did something unusual, and some of my classmates say stupid. I had been a parish priest for a couple of years in an amazing parish, St. Catherine's, where Father Lou Christopoulos is. And in the midst of that ministry, a place I think I probably could have stayed the rest of my time as a priest, I went to Metropolitan Isaiah, my bishop, and I said, I want you to transfer me. What? He said. Where do you want to go? And I said to him, well, I don't really know. But what I want to do is I want to start a mission parish. No. No, he replied. And in reflecting on his answer in that very short dialogue, I realize now just how preposterous and naive my request was at the time. You see, part of what we face, each of us, or as an archdiocese, is a barrier that exists between what we know and what we don't. What we think parish ministry is and what it might be. To put it another way, many of us can't imagine a parish that doesn't exist. My bishop couldn't. What do you mean you want to start a new parish? Now, I think more importantly, many of us can't imagine a parish that doesn't fit into our preconceived or established parameters. In such a state of mind, we could understand why Metropolitan Isaiah would respond immediately to my request without discussion and tell me, no, you cannot start a mission parish. Now keep in mind, I'm not talking here about a parish split, the growth of a parish out of a parish. Instead, the idea I was presenting to His Eminence was, I'd like to start a parish whole cloth, in a place where orthodoxy has never been before. So you might ask yourselves if such an idea is a priority of the Church. Do we have room for such thinking? Is this what we do? Now, honestly, starting a mission parish had been a secret but poorly defined desire of mine for many years, even before I attended seminary. It was an idea that had stirred in my gut and in my heart since I was a teenager. And one of the reasons had to do with my experience of parish life. I started my life in the church at a large cathedral parish. It was a parish that my grandfather had purchased the land for. It's a massive church, the Assumption Cathedral in Denver. But at 13, I experienced a split that led to the formation of a new community, one called St. Catherine's, led by a priest by the name of Father Dean Tallaghan of blessed memory, and which had as one of its founding principles the idea of outreach, or I probably should say it this way, at least an openness to non-Orthodox. I had never met someone in church who was not Orthodox. For that matter, I had never met someone in church who was not Greek and Orthodox. Now, I think this is important because without that experience, I'm sure that I myself could not have conceived of the idea of a parish that was established for the pure and simple reason of sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ and the Orthodox faith with those who had not yet received it. At the same time, I think at the heart of any follower of Jesus Christ, and so here I'm appealing to each of you, there should be the thought of mission work. I hope that all of us are a little bit like me, or better yet, like the Apostle Paul. I want you to listen to his words from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 16. For if I preach the gospel, I have nothing to boast of, for I am under compulsion. For woe is me if I do not preach the gospel. So after some time of asking, it was 2 years, and a few changes that could only have been brought, or that could only come about by providence, in 2007, Metropolitan Isaiah reluctantly agreed to the idea. I remember sitting in his office, and he looked at me and he said, "You have 2 years, that's it. You can go up north where I am is north of Denver. You can go up north for 2 years, that's all you get, and after that I'm transferring you right back into an established parish. He didn't think, he didn't feel that sending a priest to a town that had never had an Orthodox church would work. Again, the idea that we are about planting parishes was hard for him to understand. It's not a concept that many of us can conceive of. And I think our mindset tends more towards preservation, wouldn't you say? And perhaps today, better yet, renewal. But either way, whether it's renewal or preservation, our focus is inward. Now, when I arrived that first year in 2007, it was rough. I mean, it was really rough. It was difficult for many reasons. Primarily, it was hard because I didn't know what I was doing. Even though I had dreamt of a new parish established on the basis of the gospel, established on the basis of our holy tradition, and even though I went there out of the pure joy, it literally was the pure joy of just being able to share the gospel with someone who hadn't heard it, I didn't know what that meant or how to go about it. Now, I don't think I'm alone in acknowledging this, and I think that this challenge faces each of you, even in established parishes. At the time, I was not aware, and I'm still not aware, of any particular resources. That's one of the reasons for this conference and the one prior, or mentors that could guide me. And years later, I can say with certainty that this sentiment is widespread. People constantly contact me and the other presenters and ask, what do I do? It's probably how many of you feel. You're not sure how to address your challenges and, more importantly, your opportunities. And I guess it goes without saying that's why you're here. So admittedly, I didn't have any experience in starting an Orthodox church. Secondly, as far as I knew, such a parish, or at least only a handful of parishes, existed in our archdiocese. If I look back at the timestamp of when I went to that parish, I knew of only one other parish that had been established for the pure joy of sharing the Orthodox faith. And sadly, this is true, it's not something seminarians are trained to do. Mostly I had been prepared for a completely different parish paradigm. One, as a side note, I warn you, is quickly vanishing. The parish I was prepared to serve almost doesn't exist anymore. Anyway, I did feel a bit like the two characters that are described in Todd Bolsinger's excellent book on church health, Canoeing the Mountains. He talks about Lewis and Clark. Most of us know who they are, right? The great Western explorers. But what we may not realize is that Lewis and Clark were hired for one main reason. They were watermen. They knew how to navigate rivers. And so they were sent to discover a water route from the Midwest to the West, the Northwest Passage. But instead, they found themselves climbing mountains. They were climbing mountains with their canoes, and they were forced by necessity to learn new skills, skills they didn't know even existed. Of course, I wasn't the only one who noticed the immense challenge that laid before me. I got there and I literally was like, what do I do? Because every Sunday I would go home and my wife, Presbytera Stacy, would start to cry. Why did you bring us here? What are we doing? This isn't going to work. And doubts were creeping in my mind as the months rolled by because everything was hard. Harder still because I didn't have a roadmap, and neither do you. And it was hard because my pride was in the way. It was the reason I was in this struggle. You see, because of my pride and my inexperience, I had made a ton of assumptions about my abilities. At the same time, I have to remind you that no one knows what they don't know, do they? And so, to be honest, you can't know what it will mean to start a new parish until you start one. Now, I should stop here and say that the few people that gathered who received me and my family were united. They were exuberant. They were willing to work hard. And they were willing to sacrifice for the start of a new church. And perhaps more importantly, and this comes out in Todd Bolsinger's book, they were excited and ready for an adventure. To a degree, they had already unhitched themselves, this is an important point, from some of the established and perhaps restrictive viewpoints of what it meant to be an Orthodox parish in America. And that was an asset. And this, I hope you will see through our time together, is essential. So what happened? At times I'd have a handful of people on Sunday, maybe 10, maybe 20, sometimes 30. But often no chanter, no choir, no church school teachers, no fellowship, no altar boys, no icons, no books. Nothing really. And a little over a year into my time at that mission parish, Metropolitan Isaiah called me and he said, look, I'm going to come and pay a pastoral visit on Holy Wednesday. We'll do the unction service together. I was terrified. We had never had Holy Week before. Who was going to come? Now, miraculously, I'll describe this later, but it's a small church that we started in. It didn't fit that many people. And when Metropolitan Isaiah came, the church was almost full. There was only one problem. I didn't recognize who the people were. In fact, I came to realize a bit into the service that they were not Orthodox. It was the little things. No one crossed themselves. No one kissed an icon. They didn't know what was going on. Of course, those who had started the parish with me were doing their best to accommodate our guests and share with them what was going on. Yet here we were in the middle of the unction service, and I was feeling lost once again. I was climbing a mountain holding a paddle. And what do you do? What do you do when you realize that the people who are in your church, who are in your service, aren't Orthodox? So I leaned over to His Eminence and I whispered in his ear, I think we have to have 2 lines. One for the Orthodox and one for the non-Orthodox. He looked at me, what? We have to have 2 lines. One for the Orthodox and one for the non-Orthodox. What are you going to do with the non-Orthodox, Father Evan? I wasn't sure yet. By the time the service ended, we announced that at the end of the unction service, we anoint the people. There will be 2 lines tonight. If you're Orthodox, please line up in front of our bishop and he will anoint you with Holy Unction. If you're not Orthodox, please come to my line and I'm going to anoint you with oil from the altar. Guess whose line was longer? His Eminence anointed a few people. I anointed a few dozen. There are only a handful of Orthodox Christians in Loveland, Colorado. There's more now. But then there weren't many. And this was an important lesson for us, and it should be for you. If we hope to share our faith, we have to understand that we are sharing something unknown, and the path forward is not clearly marked. Now, year 2, His Eminence came back, and after his pastoral visit for the second time, he turned to me after a Sunday liturgy that was almost full, and he said, looks like you better stay. So how did we get from where we were to where we are today? Undoubtedly, it was a transformation. And you may ask yourself, did we have some kind of new and excellent outreach and evangelism program produced by the Archdiocese or some other resource? Forgive me for as hard working as Father Jim and Stacy are. They didn't at that time have resources that I could implement. And I hope that you have gathered from my introductory remarks that you probably still don't, right? Now, did we have a church on a busy street filled with icons and exquisite chanting? No. If you saw a picture of the church that we started in and you understood its location, you'd wonder, how did they make it? But maybe there were just a bunch of Orthodox in the area waiting for an Orthodox parish to show up. No. What about a full list of ministries and programs and great preaching, a cool website, a social media campaign? No, we didn't have any of that. So what then did we do or learn to do that got us where we are today? Let me reiterate that the core of the group was amazing. They were people committed from the start who were 100% in. They were willing to work hard. They were willing to be led and to lead. And I realized more and more how much God provided through them and how much they gave to make a go of things. And I'm convinced, and this is something we all have to be convinced of, I'm convinced that our parishes are full of such people. There is great research that supports this. In fact, encourages it. It encourages us to operate from a position of abundance and not scarcity. And you better be careful if you don't, and forewarned if you fail to heed the advice that you do have the resources. Operate from abundance. Now, I need to tell you a little bit more about St. Spiridon's. It is a vibrant, interesting, lively, and growing parish. And I worry that some of what I might say sounds like boasting, but it isn't. I'm just going to describe things and the blessings that God has granted. We are not perfect. We're a parish that has a lot of work to do. We're constantly a work in progress. But let me also say that besides the parish needing work, its priest needs work. I'm not an expert. I'm not an answer man. But like you, I just simply love Jesus Christ. I love Him. I love His church. And I'm doing the best I can, and I have a lot to learn. But here are some examples of what's happened in the last 10 years. We started in a building that could barely fit 60 people. We had under 2,000 square feet total. It was on a street corner, no parking, no playground. There was only one office and a little chapel. Today we have over 17,000 square feet. We have a sanctuary paid for that seats over 330 people. We've got a gym, a playground, parking, over 17 classes, several offices. On a weekday liturgy, it's not unusual for me to have a full complement of altar boys, a choir, several chanters, ushers, and often we need 2 chalices on a weekday service. I began serving the parish on my own, and today we have a youth director, a church school director, choir director, chanting director, a parish administrator, 2 deacons, myself, and we just requested a second priest, which His Eminence said we'll get this summer. I've performed over 237 baptisms and chrismations. 2 years ago on Pascha, we had 21 in one day. I remember calling His Eminence, what do I do with 21 baptisms on the same day? And he said, Vre pivimu. My child, line them up. Okay. I hear, literally during Lent, we set out a schedule, and there are slots for 10 minutes to have your confession read or heard, because we hear hundreds each Lent. Sometimes on a regular day, I'll hear 10 a day. And last year, Father Jim, you kind of mentioned it, our giving rose by 24%. That's a big number, isn't it? It's not bragging. It's just a description. How did we get there? Well, the answer is parish health. Of course, I can only say that now from the vantage point that I have. I couldn't have articulated this in year 5 or 6 or probably even 2 or 3 years ago. And I know that I didn't come to this idea on my own. Rather, the community that I am with found the answer together. All of us had to climb a mountain with a canoe. If I've added anything to this process, it's simply that I was immersed in it, and I'm a witness to it. I feel like I have a set of experiences that have given me a unique perspective that I want to share with you now. As I said earlier, we didn't, and I certainly did not have a program for outreach and evangelism. And tongue-in-cheek, there isn't a manual. Have you seen it? No. You haven't because it doesn't exist. So without a plan or a manual, what did we do that got us pointed in the direction we are on? Well, so let me tell you a quick story. Just 3 weeks ago, another new person showed up for liturgy on a Sunday. Unfortunately, this happens all the time. Yesterday was Sunday. There were 8 new people yesterday. Just came to church for the first time, walked in the door. This new guest's name was Jill. Now, our welcoming team found out that she was church and religion shopping. And she had been on this quest for several months. And one of our welcome ministry leads told me that after her second time with us, she's told them, because we have this whole process by which we talk to people, but she told them that this church seemed really healthy. Let me remark that our welcome ministry members have been inoculated by our parish culture to engage with guests. And in fact, just a couple months ago, we did a whole talk on parish culture at Holy Cross. And I think, Father Jim, that short video is coming out with several others from your department soon, right? Well, anyway, it's interesting, isn't it? That what she said about her visit to St. Spiridon's is that the community is healthy. That was her experience. Now, today we pay a lot of attention to that word. Now, that isn't to say that we aren't still chasing health. And it isn't to say that at the beginning we didn't have any idea what a healthy parish was. Yet, we are still pursuing health. So 3 years ago, another story, our community was one of 30 Christian communities selected from across the U.S. and Canada, from every denomination you can think of, by the Lilly Foundation. Have you heard of the Lilly Foundation? They've got hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're interested in Christian communities. And so they picked one Orthodox church. They happened to pick our parish. And it was a 2-year study on community health. They wanted to know why we, along with the 29 other Christian communities in the group, had learned to thrive and grow in an environment, listen to this, in an environment where the average number of churches that close in America alone could be as high as 10,000. 10,000 churches close each year in America. If you want to look that up, it's in the Atlantic in November of 2018. So how were we and these other 29 communities thriving in such an environment? Now, I have to tell you that the 29 parish leaders that I met were some of the most incredible Christian leaders I've ever encountered. And in that time, I learned to process the experience I had had at St. Spiridon's through their experiences, through listening to them. And one of the things that came out in those 2 years that we were together as a cohort was that our experience was the same. All of us affirmed that the reason our communities were vital and growing was because we had been pursuing this concept of parish health. I can remember even sitting late one evening with the pastor of the largest Presbyterian community in the United States. And I was telling her some of the things that I was trying. And I thought they were revolutionary. And I'll never forget her response. She said to me, "Oh, you're just being healthy, aren't you?" So in time, what I came to realize and articulate was that what we are doing to grow and thrive in our parish is simply be relatively healthy. As I landed today in Columbus, I pulled open an email from a parishioner who recently lost both her husband and her son. And she opened up and she said, "Dear Father Evan, thanks for being normal and healthy." Starting points. Well, focusing on parish health is not formulaic or sequential. One can't simply write down a list of steps and then slavishly and doggedly pursue them. That would be a major mistake. That is to say, you shouldn't think that you can just make a list out of what I'm going to say or the experiences and actions we've taken or others have taken, and you'll achieve parish health. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the call with a parish leader and they've said to me, "Father, just give me a list of your best practices." And I tell them, that's not going to get you there. Instead, parish health is conceptual and it's organic. While it will have the same concepts everywhere, it is unique to your setting. It can't be contrived. It can't be applied even. But it must grow from within. It has to grow inside of you and the leaders that you inoculate. And instead of steps, and here's a key phrase, instead of steps, what parish health is about is learning to live specific concepts. If you learn these concepts, then you apply them across the board in whatever it is that you do. So what I'm saying is that you learn to live parish health in how you worship, in how you serve, in how you educate, in how you are community, and in how you administer. And so this means that health is not a formula. It's not a list. You're sitting there and you're writing it down, but I can guarantee you're going to walk out of here and you're going to go right back to, what's the list? What's the formula? It's not a list. It's not a pill. You don't take parish health. It's a lifestyle. And I think that this is one of the biggest challenges we face. When I visit with other parish leaders who are struggling to adapt to this changing reality, they simply struggle to understand the nature of the challenge before us. When Lewis and Clark got to the Rocky Mountains, canoes didn't help them. You understand? They had to do something else to get over them. And the difference between what has been labeled as adaptive change and technical change at this point is important for you to understand. Has anybody ever heard of adaptive and technical change? There's a couple of you. Raise your hand high if you know adaptive and technical change. Okay, some of you know what it is. I'm going to help you. This is not Father Evan's set of ideas. The person that really is the expert or pioneer is Ron Heifetz, in my view. Ron Heifetz, okay? He identifies these two types of change. He says there's adaptive and there's technical. And what Lewis and Clark had to make was an adaptive change. What we had to do at St. Spiridon's was make an adaptive change, not a technical change. So let me summarize what that means. Technical change, Heifetz says, are changes that can be solved by the knowledge of experts. Okay? Whereas adaptive change, Heifetz notes, requires new learning. Hence the idea that two watermen had to learn how to be mountain men. Hence the idea that what we are facing in our own parishes in the United States is a paradigm shift in what parish life is. The old paradigm is vanishing. And you can't take your old lessons. New wine cannot go into old wineskins. And so that's a scary thought. You know, I had a 4-year master's degree from Holy Cross. I had a 4-year degree from Boston College. I had spent 8 years in private industry. And when I got to St. Spiridon's, none of it helped. I know it doesn't help because I lived it. What I knew to do, I couldn't do. What do you do at an unction service when no one's Orthodox? This means that we have for too long accepted the rather wrong-headed notion that there is a formula or a pill that we can take to address our challenges. And we continue to think this way, and then we believe that what we need to do is implement new programs and manuals or old programs better, instead of adapting and heading into new areas of learning and discovery. You know, when you think like this, when you fail to liberate yourselves and get beyond technical change is saying something like, the reason people don't come to liturgy is because liturgy is at the wrong time. So we need to do liturgy at 9, not 10. That's a technical change. An adaptive change is liturgy sung to gospel music. That's an adaptive change. I'm not saying that that's the adaptive change to make. I'm just trying to give you a way of illustrating the difference. So once we sort of liberate ourselves from this idea of technical change, then we stop looking for quick fixes. Okay, there aren't any quick fixes. We stop looking for the 1 or 2 or 3 ideas that we can just go home and plug those in. We don't look for the program. I think maybe more importantly, we stop believing and entertaining the fantasy of doing what worked in the past. We just need to do what we used to do better. No. We can't even believe that parish health is simply a matter of working harder, working smarter, working better. Now I know, and this is a disclaimer, so just lay down your sword and shield if you've picked one up in the last 2 minutes. Yes, there are ideas. Yes, there are methods. Yes, planning is important. Certainly, we don't have to throw out everything from the past. And working harder and smarter are not bad ideas. But the tragedy of thinking health comes this way is that we will fail to innovate and change because the plan is not the plan. So allow me to answer the question, how do we change the focus then in our communities to parish health? I still haven't defined it for you. We're going to do that. But let me talk to you about what is needed, because we often don't count the cost. You remember the parable of the Lord saying, a man who went out to, build a tower, but he didn't count the cost, and he only builds it sort of halfway, and then his half-built tower is a folly, and people laugh at him? Well, if you're going to get into parish health, then you need to know what you're getting into. So I'm going to tell you. First, it's blood, sweat, and tears. I think it's Winston Churchill who coined the phrase, but I'll borrow it. Blood. Why is it blood? Why is going after parish health blood? Because charting this path towards health will cost you something. It'll cost you dearly. People will have to give of themselves sacrificially. I want you to think of the cross. Second, sweat. Parish health takes hard work. If you don't want to work, don't even start. Stay away from the idea of parish health, because parish health is a long-term reality. It's not something that you achieve in a week, in a month, in 6 months, in 10 years. It's forever and ever unto the ages of ages. Amen. Sorrow, tears. You're going to have to say goodbye to some things, and that's both hard and it's sad. You can't move down the path of parish health without loss. But I want you to keep in mind some losses are gains. Think of pruning, right? Ultimately, pruning is a positive process. It leads to greater health, more fruit. And if we want to have parish health, then we can't keep everything we've attempted to do in the past to make this lifestyle change. Additionally, what else will be needed to make this journey? Well, courageous leadership. I think I have it up there, right? Courageous leaders. I will leave this topic to a later presentation. I think Father Theodore is going to talk a lot about courageous leadership. It's really an important concept. Such an important concept that in the talks I've given on parish health, I've done just a whole session just on this. It's another world, but it's an important world. So just write it down for now. It takes patience and attention. Patience, because we've already mentioned that health doesn't come about overnight. It's just like losing weight. It's like you don't just go on a diet and then tomorrow you've lost all the weight. It takes time. It takes attention because you can't be healthy without sustained effort. You know, one of the tragedies that I've seen is that people start the process but don't stay in the process. And if you don't stay in it, you won't see the results you need. Okay? And I think, you know, it's an attractive idea to let's get healthy, let's revitalize, let's renew. But is it attractive 5 years from now? So you need attention. It does require trial and error. You know, if you're going to go about parish health, you know, if you're going to shoot for this, then you have to be willing to try new things. I'll give you an example. We're constantly trying new things. Father Jim, you graciously mentioned something new that we're trying. We got rid of the stewardship card. It worked. Now, what if it didn't work? Then we would have gone back to it, right? I'll give you another adaptive change. So when do we typically hold the agathist? Yeah, at what time? In the evening, on Fridays, right? So this year we're not, because we've realized it doesn't work. So we're going to do it on Friday mornings. Now, that's trial and error. We're going to see what happens, and we're going to see if more people are available to come to it and participate in it. We're adding a tea and a book study afterwards. It is a combination of both skill and artistry. You know, I want you to think of a chef in a kitchen, or sort of how my mom or my grandmother, my yaya, used to cook. When I asked her for her recipe for avellino, literally, step 1 said, get a big pot. 2, a good chicken. 3, add water. 4, spices. 5, boil. That was it. But you know, she would sit over that stove and she'd taste it and she'd know it needed a little bit more salt or whatever it was, a little more lemon at the end. And definitely it takes the breath of God, that's for sure. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of prayer. Of course, all of it is worth it, because I can tell you just a year ago, we built this new sanctuary. And for the first time, we put iconography in. When we moved into our new church, 23% of the community had never worshiped in an actual Orthodox church. For almost 2 years, we'd been in a gym. So they had never seen a candle stand. They had never venerated a pangadi, you know, at the proscenitario, I mean. They'd never seen an icon screen. So when they came into the new church, and for the first time they saw hand-painted iconography, you know, full, more spacious than the heavens, you know, the Platitera, a Pantocrator, an Almighty. They were with tears and mouths wide open. And the next morning, my inbox was full of emails like this one. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Father, for last night and for all of the explanation you gave to our new iconography. It was a great evening. I love being there with everyone. It was so celebrative. We have so much to be thankful for. So thankful for you, your sacrifices, all that the leaders of our community offer. I love our parish. I love our community. I love you. So thankful. Now, I don't know that this is important, but maybe it is. This is a woman who is not, or was not, Orthodox 3 years ago. You know, St. Paul wrote, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the gospel of peace, who bring glad tidings of good things, Romans 10:15. It's worth it. All the blood, sweat, and tears, all the patience and trial and effort, the good things, the bad things, it was all worth it. So, let's get on to a definition of parish health. Now, if today I took you and I blindfolded you and I transported you somehow to the parish of St. Spiridon, And I asked you with that blindfold to describe your experience of the parish. And even if you were to take that blindfold off and just see an aspect of what we did, you would have an incomplete view of who we are. You'd probably misinterpret or misunderstand of how we got to be where we are today. So I want to give you a definition. Now, for the first time, I provided a definition about parish health at the clergy lady at the metropolis of San Francisco last March. And I want to thank Tomaida Hudanish, who organized that conference. But since then, my thinking has continued to refine, and so this definition or context that I give to parish health has changed a bit. But I want to talk to you about it. I'm going to propose a definition of parish health that has 4 concepts that work together. And it's my experience that these 4 concepts not only work together, but they do so at various degrees, but at the same time. Now, first and foremost, it might seem completely obvious to all of you that parish health is a commitment to Christ and the gospel. Now, I know that the first goal we have at St. Spiridon's is to help and encourage people to meet Jesus. That's what we want to do first, okay? We want people who come to our parish to meet Jesus. We want to put them in relationship with Him and the good news of the gospel. We want to develop a community that meets and exceeds this deep spiritual need, not only for those in the community, but those who we have not yet met. But I don't think we should kid ourselves, because in stating that we should have a commitment to Christ and the gospel first, that's what we say. And is anybody going to disagree with the point? No. Right? But that's not currently and everywhere what's happening in our parishes. We have all seen numerous examples in local parishes at the metropolis level, at the archdiocesan level, that tell a different story. Our actions are constantly contradicting this first concept. There's a gap between our statement of faith in Christ and the gospel and our actual life in Christ. I'm not going to, I hope you don't get upset. But the largest event in our archdiocese is not focused on Christ and the gospel. I'll leave your imagination to figure out what that event is. I can say that in my metropolis, the largest event in my metropolis does not have Christ and the gospel as its center point. It's something else. In many of our parishes, it's the same thing. And so we have to be honest, and we have to be willing to recommit. We have to be in pursuit of the essential truth that Christ and the gospel should be first in all of our parishes. It's essential. Otherwise, we will continue to fall into making sacred the specific. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but we've made sacred the specific throughout our archdiocese. We know that the liturgy states emphatically that we must commit ourselves and one another and our whole life to Christ our God. Doesn't it say that in the liturgy? And to do this, we must follow our Lord's first public command to repent, to constantly renew our minds and our hearts. And this prayer cannot be stylized, it has to be actualized. Second, with all my heart, I'm convinced that parish health is about connecting my faith in Christ and the gospel to my everyday life. I remember my grandmother used to tell me when I would do something on Sunday that was not in concordance with Christ, she'd say, "But my child, the taste of communion is still on your lips." Right? This means that I have to measure personally how healthy we are as a parish by how much of the gospel and the faith that I have in Christ and His truth is found in my daily life, in my home, as I travel, as I visit with people, and in the lives of my parishioners. I'm constantly asking them and asking myself, does what Jesus said impact your life? Is our parish different today than it was yesterday because we have applied to a greater extent our belief in Jesus and the gospel? If we were to vanish as a parish, would anyone notice? We have to have the courage to discern whether or not our people are applying the gospel to their lives, and if not, then to go after it. Third, parish health is about relationships and community building. You know, our faith proclaims a community of three persons who live in a mutual and eternal movement of love for one another. That's nice theology, isn't it? That's a definition of Trinity. But this is what it means. When I arrived at St. Spiridon's, one of the first questions I got from the few that were gathered was, how long was I going to stay? And I told the handful of people gathered for our first parish assembly that I was going to leave my bones there. I pointed to my oldest child, who at the time was 5, now 18, and I said, you're all going to be coming to her wedding. I told them that I'm going to marry you, I'm going to bury you, I'm going to baptize your children. And I said, you need to become a family. I'm going to recommend an author by the name of Peter Block to you. Check out his work. But one of the things that he points out is that a healthy church develops the bonds, the fellowship, the community, and the interconnected social interactions of a family. Stated theologically, a parish imitates the Trinity. Now, one of the maverick builders of community in that Lilly Foundation study disputed this point, but rather they all emphasized it. Finally, parish health is excellence in one's leadership, in organization, in administration, in the structures, operational excellence. Now, I'm not kidding you that when we started St. Spiridon's, when we first got going, we often failed to deposit people's checks. Can you believe that? They'd give us money and then we wouldn't put it in the bank. And at our first parish council meeting, I asked the treasurer, how much money do we have? He says, I don't know. I have no idea. You know, we realize that we lack the proper leadership, we lack the proper organizational structure. And so parish health is found in the excellence of our day-to-day leadership, in our day-to-day management and operation of the fundamentals. It doesn't matter if we get the other three right but fail to get the fourth one. You got to do them all. And you can't do the fourth one without the first one. Of course, I think we're still learning to lead courageously. We're learning to communicate effectively, to operate with integrity and transparency, to have clarity about vision and mission, roles and responsibilities, to show fiscal discipline, and to have greater administrative order. So these are the concepts that, when applied daily and faithfully, lead to parish health. Just a couple more slides. Now, having introduced this set of concepts to you, I need to implore you to avoid getting sidetracked, because there are some intriguing concepts that aren't really healthy. And we should recognize that parish health can mean different things to different people. Within your parish, there are a group of people who will perhaps be attracted to this idea and work with you. There are people who will resist it, and there are people who will sabotage it. Okay? And I want to give you just a few ideas of the sidetracks or the sabotages that many communities experience. Lots of people think that a healthy parish has lots of money and lots of people. Would you think the same? If you showed up and there was tons of people and there was a lot of money, then this must be a healthy parish. Yet one of the thriving communities that the Lilly study put in our group, of all of the Christian communities that they could have asked, was a small inner city community in San Francisco that gathered in borrowed spaces and arranged for members to share housing. More to the point, every bit of research, good research, that we know about parish health states that money and people are trailing indicators. In other words, they are not what you go after. They're what happens. Another sidetrack that many of us go down is that parish health is really about a specific program or a specific ministry. But again, the growing communities in the Lilly Foundation study avoided becoming fixated on any one program or ministry. Instead, they've focused on the idea of bringing people to Christ, connecting Christ to their daily life, forming the interconnected web of social interaction and operational excellence. Another danger that people seem to slip into is to think that healthy parishes preserve their pasts and their heritage. But I think all of us have to agree that this is a dangerous temptation. Even a young community like St. Spiridon's, by year 5, was starting to idolize its beginning. And that was a sign that we're losing steam. I think I also have to provide for you some important context to what I've been saying about health. The first is to say that we know that not all types of growth in the parish are good or sustainable. I want you to think of the Nazi Party. The Nazi Party grew rapidly. It took over an entire country. But no one here would say it was good. And ultimately, thankfully, it wasn't sustainable. Or how about Beanie Babies? A little less innocuous than the Nazi Party, right? It was a craze, wasn't it? Where are they now? We have to learn to honestly examine and critique some areas of growth within our parishes. That's the point I'm trying to drive at. I have gone to many churches, and I've witnessed incredible programs. I've seen many metropolises with the same thing that attract hundreds and even thousands of participants, but fail to increase health or any of the concepts of parish health one bit. Believe it or not, St. John Chrysostom wrote about this same problem in his day. He illustrated in his talking points about church growth. Next, parish health is a continuum. A lot of times people say to me, if I visited, Father, are we healthy? And I say, there is no score. Health's a continuum. That means there's no end to it. Instead, what we should recognize is that any step towards health is good. And additional steps are even better. And when you're in this mind step, then you stop placing yourselves on this constant track of, where am I? Instead, you become addicted, if you will, to something that happened in St. Paul. He wrote in 1 Philippians chapter 3, verse 13b, that means the second part of the verse, and 14, one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind, I reach forward to what lies ahead. I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Also, we have to recognize the change in landscape that each of us face. The successes of the past can't be applied. We've already said that. And the world today is not the world of yesterday. I'm going to give you some statistics. And usually when I share these, people are shocked. But since 1996 through 2015, and we haven't even really seen the full scope of the registry statistics since, the number of baptisms and chrismations in the Archdiocese has decreased by almost 25%. Does that sound alarming? But don't worry, in the same period, funerals are up 30%. Less people coming in, more people going out. 80% of our marriages do not happen within the church. Worse still, in America, the no longer interested or non-affiliated with any faith is at an all-time high of 29%. But that number jumps to 35% when you take into account people born after 1980. So the generation coming up is less interested. Unfortunately, Orthodoxy ranks in the lowest category for retaining its youth. This all tells us that a nominal or cultural Christianity cannot work. And I think almost, this is something I constantly face, is that the urgency that we take to this change cannot be glacial. It's as if some of us think that we are bleeding when we're hemorrhaging. Without a sense of urgency, then we become numb. Now, none of this is meant to be said as a fear tactic. It's not about doom or gloom, but you just simply got to recognize what you face. It's a changed landscape. It's getting harder every day. That's all it is, something different. But you've got to recognize that it is different. And you have to meet this challenge correctly. Finally, we have to recognize it's God who gives the growth. How many of you remember the parable of the good farmer in Mark? He plants, and the seed grows, and he knows not how. What that tells me is that growth will occur because God intends it. But if it doesn't occur, it means you're in its way. You see? If you get out of the way, what happens? You'll grow. If you're in the way, you won't. And so what we have to do is remember that the context is about removing the barriers that are inhibiting health in our parishes. Second to last slide. So to ensure that we stay on track, this is an important slide. What I've learned is that it is essential to communicate and develop the shared understanding of what parish health is with your leaders and those who are being led over and over. To do this, we, that's all of us in the room, have to be clear about what the concepts of parish health are for ourselves and with our people. And we constantly socialize them again and again. I take it as a matter of pride that when Father Theodore visited my parish to provide a leadership retreat, he repeated a statement that I constantly make in my presentations. And all my people went, yeah, we've heard him say it. It's important that we share the definition, this common definition, so we can gain agreement, to get everyone rowing in the same direction, to get their paddles in the water at the same time. Second, what's the role of leadership in all of this? Well, one of the things that leadership has to do is not manage the process, but lead the process. They lead this by guarding and redirecting the parish towards the concepts of parish health. That's their job. In my own parish, whenever the leadership steps back from this role of redirection and guarding, other concepts arise. Maybe parish health is this. Maybe it's that. And while these concepts may be dangerous, they often aren't. They're often just mundane. They're innocuous. But regardless, every time one of them arises, it results in a lack of focus and drains precious resources. So we have to learn to clarify again and again where we are headed and keep our head about it. I had a leadership coach. I still consult with him, but I saw him for 4 years, and he used to always say to me, you know what, Father Evan, your biggest problem is? You don't think. When you're leading, you have to constantly be thinking. And when you're constantly thinking, you're constantly on guard and redirecting the vision. You need to understand that a sign of an unhealthy parish is its lack of clarity about what parish health is. And so you start to work really hard or ultimately on meaningless endeavors. This leadership coach told me, I want you to put down everything you do, and I'm going to analyze it. And so he said to me, Father Evan, you're a great ditch digger. He says, you dig deep and you dig long, but you dig to nowhere. Right? So I'd get in there and I'd start digging and I'd dig and I'd dig and I'd build this whole big thing, and it had nothing to do with parish health. This happens all the time in our parishes. Finally, last little thing. Leadership must ensure that the specifics don't replace the essentials. Now, how many of you just kind of have no concept of what I'm talking about? Raise your hand if you're just like, I don't know what he's saying. Okay. Specifics replacing essentials. Now, don't get mad. Don't throw anything at me, okay? But I'm going to paint a hypothetical situation, okay? I know of parish priests who spend a lot of their year on Greek school, Greek dance, and Greek festivals. And these hypothetical priests that have to do that will tell me that 4, even 5 months of their year are taken up with, what are they? Greek school, Greek dance, and Greek festivals. Now don't get mad, but that's a specific, not an essential of parish health, isn't it? And guess what? How limitless are your resources in your parish? Anybody raise their hand here and tell me that they have limitless resources? Nobody? So what if you spend 10% of your time on those things? What about 20? I fear it's closer to 40%, right? That's where the specific has replaced the essential. You know, St. Paul faced the same problem with St. Peter, didn't he? When St. Peter sided with the party of the circumcised, and he said, you know, circumcision is probably something that we should require. And what did St. Paul do? He said, I confronted him to his face and said, you are no longer walking in the gospel. This is where courageous leadership comes in. We place the non-essential in front of the main thing all the time. And you know what? There's a bevy of literature that tells you that when the specific replaces the essential, the specific becomes sacred. Try to remove one of those items from a parish. I'm just going to tell you, it's just a story. Don't judge it, just hear the story. I was a director of church school in a parish on the West Coast. Each year I would go to the parish council and ask for an increase in budget, and each year I was told no. In that same parish, the budget for dance was $25,000. And the third year I was there, the budget jumped by double. It went to $50,000. I was asking for $1,500. They bought new uniforms. And so I asked the parish council, okay, no increase, I got it. Can I do a presentation at the end of the year recognizing our students' accomplishments and its teachers? No. But at the end of a certain festival, the parish paraded its dance groups into the church and onto the solea and showed off the awards they had won at the festival. Does that sound like the specific has replaced the essential? Now, are any of you upset? Are you okay?
Yes, we are.
You're a little bit upset?
No.
No. Is it truth? Yes. It's truth. But we're terrified to speak of it. You know the story of Captain Winters, Band of Brothers?
Yeah.
Yeah? If you don't know the story, read the book by Ambrose, Stephen Ambrose. So Band of Brothers was a group, a platoon, Company E. They're going into France. They get to a village. They're pinned down by sniper fire. The soldiers get to the ditches. Captain Winters knows, if we stay in the ditches, we die. So he gets out of the ditch. Sniper shooting at him. And he says to his men, get out of the ditch or you're going to die. We need to get out of the ditch. We're going to die in these ditches. Stephen Covey said in his landmark book, The 7 Principles of Highly Effective People, that the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Right? Okay. Now, an important note to pulling all this off is my dad's favorite phrase, volto rigini. Does anybody know what volto rigini means? What is it?
Put some oregano on it so it's going to start to smell.
Yeah, throw on the oregano, right? So my baba, my dad, I grew up in my father's diner. Wow, how Greek American of me, right? And when something was going on, sometimes my dad would say, Vangeli, volto rigini, right? Throw on the oregano. And I think the idiom roughly translated means, right? Throw on the oregano. But what it means is something is done. Something's cooked. Something's finished. Well, what I want to say to you is that if the leadership of our parishes, including our hierarchs, we have one here. If the leadership of our parishes, including our hierarchs, are not engaged in the concept of parish health, hooked, if you will, then Valtorigini. I know, and you know, that a parish priest has more to do than he can ever do. We wear so many hats, it's ridiculous. And if we don't start taking some of them off, then Valtorigini. I'm a father. I have 4 children. I'm a husband. But I'm also a parish priest. I'm a teacher. I'm a liturgist. I'm a counselor. I'm a manager. I'm a fundraiser. The list goes on. And in such a state, priests often lose sight of the main thing. And the main thing is no longer than the main thing. But that's true for parish leaders as well. I'll tell you about a Philiptos meeting I went to many years ago. It wasn't in my parish, and it wasn't even the first parish I served in. But there was a knockdown, drag-out fight over the fact that the Serbian contingency wanted to have Serbian cookies at the bake sale. And the Greek leaders said, no, this is a Greek Orthodox parish. There will only be Greek cookies. Really? And we're laughing because it happens all over the place, right? Parish leadership constantly lose sight of the main thing. But the reality is that our parish council, key ministry leaders, and others have to make sure that they are constantly shunting off things that are not essential. And unlike an evangelism program, unlike a fundraising campaign, unlike a building project, parish health is something that has to be constantly at the forefront in a consistent pursuit of our parishes. Whereas, as I said earlier, parish health is something we do now and forever and into the ages of ages. The last thing that I want to say about this, in this slide of Valtorigini, is that nothing's going to change in our communities without a corresponding change in our leaders and their behaviors. Of course, people resist change. That's a given. Of course, people sabotage it. But the first place of resistance is where? It's in you. There's a lot of research about, how a parish culture changes, and one of the statistics I love to quote, and people always go, where did you get this? Is that of parishes that attempt to make the change, only 7% get there. Think about that. 93% of the people fail who try. But I think that statistic has to be broken apart. Because why is it that they fail? It's pretty simple. Because either the leader himself or the people being led resist the change. But it starts with the leader. I have to tell you in all honesty that over and again, as I've gone through this process and something new came about, I noticed that it would push me, and I'd often react by wanting to resist it. But over and again, that got us nowhere. The same thing happened in my parish. My choir director is, I think, very innovative. He's tried all sorts of things. The choir is really magnificent, but he sings or has the choir sing different styles all the time. And at first, people lost their minds. That's not the Trisagion I know, Father. So? Right? When I was a child, we sang this one. Right? It's not even really an authentic one. We're constantly resisting change. But you have to remember that Christ's first public words were repent, metanoite. And that's the continuous imperative command voice. What Jesus was saying is that we had to be repenting and keep on repenting. So thus parish health can only happen in our communities when we as leaders are committed to a heartful change in thinking and in action. Well, you probably are wondering, and I did this one for my daughters. I put a frozen slide in. The benefits of launching into the unknown. Now, I'd be lying to you if I said that my parish gets it right all the time, or that we get it right right away. Or that we're getting it right now. We're not. But getting it right is not the goal. Getting healthy is. And so what this means is that in the 13 years that I've been at St. Spiridon's, I really can point to more mistakes in the last 13 years than I made in the 38 years prior to arriving at St. Spiridon's. But what I didn't know, or what others didn't know, did lead us to more discoveries. And growth and vitality and transformation means you can't operate in your pride or in your fear. You can't assume you know what you're doing, but you don't need to worry about that. What you need to pursue is health. When you accept that the road ahead won't look like the road behind, then an adventure begins. And two things happen. You're going to find new ways forward. You're going to adaptively change. Second, you're going to ask new questions, and you're going to implement new ideas. I think the concept of parish health is revolutionary. And I know that what it means is that your outreach, your evangelism, in fact, everything, your worship, your service, the way you communicate, educate, all of it will change. And I also know it's a journey. And I also know you don't know where it will lead. You know, when I asked Bishop Isaiah to release me to start a mission parish, I never would have envisioned standing here telling you about it. And keep in mind that Loveland, Colorado is not very big, about 56,000 people. A bunch of people who had never heard about Orthodoxy. But I know it can work in Muncie, Indiana. I know it can work in Bangor, Maine. I know it can work in Carson City, Nevada, because it did work in Loveland, Colorado. And I know that as you chase this concept of parish health, you will find that it will lead you down a similar path. For me, and for the parishioners of St. Spiridon, that journey has truly transformed us. And what a journey it's been. Thank you for allowing me to share it with you. So I think Father Jim wants us to do some Q&A. Is that correct? Stacy's got a mic that he's setting up. Just as we get ready for that first question, as you walk out tonight, you're going to receive two resources. One of them is from Tomaida, the Orthodox calendar, and the second one is this Pascha passport package that you can use for your Lenten journey. Father?
I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you, Father.
I've been Orthodox about 30 years. Before that, I was a Pentecostal pastor. And of course, Pentecostalism is the fastest growing branch of Christianity in the world. Mm-hmm. And my question is this: how many times did you hear and how did you deal with it? Father, we can't do that because it's not Orthodox. Father, we can't do that because it's Protestant.
Right.
Or, Father, that's just not a part of our tradition.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that question. At the Clergy Laity for the Metropolis of San Francisco, we provided a resource of a summary of St. John Chrysostom's teachings on this subject. And you'd be floored by what he has to say. The first point that I guess I would make is that there's nothing that is truly Protestant that isn't Orthodox first. Do you understand what I'm saying, Father? The concept that we don't do it because it's not Orthodox is just foolishness. Now, I think we have to obviously make a statement that soothes people, because we have to change what we can change and leave what can't be changed unchanged, right? There's a distinction to be made. And we do that, you know, in my presentation in Oregon, I talked about the space shuttle Challenger. Is that the one that blew up? Do you remember it blew up because of an O-ring? It was a little part that caused this magnificent machine to blow up and not reach its orbit in space, right? Loss of life, it's tragic. And similarly, I think, Father, one of the challenges that we face is helping people to start to strain out and discern that what we're asking them to do is find the O-ring, to look for the barriers, right? And remove them. We're not asking them to toss out orthodoxy. We're asking them to toss out what is inhibiting orthodoxy, right? So one of the images that I often give people is I want you to think about your parish as a funnel, right? We all know what a funnel is, right? And I want you to honestly ask yourself, which side of the funnel is up? The wide side or the narrow side? And in people's defense of orthodoxy, or what is orthodox, we can't do that, that's Protestant, or that's not our tradition, they're usually upholding the narrow end of the funnel, aren't they? And I want you to notice what happens when you hold up the narrow end of the funnel. Only a few things get in, right? But as they descend, what happens when they come out? Chaos. When we flip the funnel the other way, they come in chaotic, but they slowly find their way to the center. Now, Christ talks about this in the parable of the dragnet, right? We cast this big net, and we catch all manner of fish. Who cleans them? The angels. So I think one of the things that we have to do is reset the paradigm, right, for our people. And I think we have to start to have this conversation, right, gain congruency around what is parish health. You know, don't just jump in and say we're going to change this and change that. We have to understand the temperature in the parish, right, and a little bit of artistry with it, like a chef on a stovetop. But I don't think we should kowtow to that's not Orthodox. That's Protestant. That doesn't even make sense. You know what I'm saying? So when you ask how often do I hear it, yeah, I hear it a lot. But I try to confront it lovingly with facts, right?
I want to ask you, what percentage of the people who took the Orthodox faith as a result of some of the things you were doing in your parish, what percentage were fallen away Orthodox Christians, and what percentage were converts?
Good question. So when you mean fall away, do you mean fall away Orthodox?
Fallen away Orthodox who had accepted, who grew up with the faith,
and left, came back
after college, or
right,
after high school.
Right. So the question is, you know, what percentage of the community are those who came back to Orthodoxy, those who are new to Orthodoxy, right? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So some people talk about this as a revert. Have you ever heard of that? Instead of a convert, you're a revert, or a retread, some people call it. You know, in our parish, the percentage, probably less than 6%, are reverts. You know, people who at one point were Orthodox, left Orthodoxy, and came back. Okay? A good 94% of our growth has come from people who had never been Orthodox before. I think what's more important is to distinguish within that number how many of those people are coming from a Christian background, right? And those who are coming to the gospel for the first time. So you remember Jill I was talking about? Jill has never been a Christian, right? Yesterday there were 8 visitors. 2 of them were not Christian. 6 of them were Christian. So I would say probably 70% of those who are showing up at the parish practiced some form of Christianity before they got there, right? About 24% of them, you know, had never been Christian. They were agnostic. Maybe they were Muslim, Mormon, and about 6%, 7% of those coming to the church are returning to Orthodoxy. Other questions? There's one right behind you, Stacy. Hello.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation.
Welcome.
So, when you were talking about you have a leadership mentor,
Yeah.
so you mentioned that he told you to not think.
No, you told me to think.
Or to think, sorry. And so initially when I heard that, well, first off, I think it's really cool that you have a leadership mentor, because at first, I guess, when I first heard about it, or that concept back at school, it seemed like, oh, we're bringing this essence of like business into like how to run a church, but So anyway, my question is, when I first heard that, it seemed kind of counterintuitive. I guess initially what came to my mind was the book, Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives. I think we should stop thinking that. And then we'll get somewhere. So I guess what do you mean when your mentors told you to think more?
To think
without
more?
or overthinking?
Okay, so you're referencing the idea of thinking more as a leader, and your backdrop is the spiritual work by Elder Thaddeus, Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives, and he talks a lot about letting go of these thoughts. I think the thoughts that he has in mind are those piras me, right? The temptations that come to us that distract us from our spiritual life. I think I want to address maybe a question you weren't asking, but one that is often on people's minds when I give presentations like this, that it seems like I'm bringing in a lot of concepts from the world. But the world is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, right? Every good thing, every good giving comes from our Father above, the Father of lights, right? So, in my pursuit, in my own repentance to grow as a leader, I came to the conclusion that I wasn't a born leader, and I don't think that phrase means anything. I don't think there are born leaders. I think leadership is a learned skill, right? So like anything else, whether it's, playing an instrument or practicing a sport, becoming great at tennis, you have to practice. But to practice, you need coaches. So it just seemed to me, in the very simplistic way, I think, that I needed somebody who knew how to do it. So I sought out, he happened to be a very faithful, and is a very faithful Orthodox Christian, but he also was a very successful businessman. Now, if you look at the life and ministry of Christ, I don't think anything that I just said in this presentation contradicts anything that Christ himself did. Christ was an exceptional leader, the best leader ever, right? And he applied these same concepts, right? So to your specific question of thinking, what my leadership coach was saying was that I reacted a lot. And I often was in a situation where I didn't assess what was going on. I didn't apply the concepts. I didn't look at our vision and mission statements and then coalesce those thoughts and then determine a course of action. I was always reactive. And a lot of us are that way. We're swinging and, we're constantly penduluming. Or we're digging in one direction and that doesn't work. We hit a brick wall, so we dig in another direction. And we never get out of the ditch and just go, where do we need to dig to? And that was really what he was saying. It's like, you work a lot, you dig deep, you dig hard, but you have no plan. You don't know what you're doing. So get out of the ditch and think. Slow the game down. See what's happening. Come up with a game plan, right? And then apply the same principles over and over. So parish health is something I talk about in a ministry leader meeting. It's something I talk about in a business meeting. It's something I talk about in my sermons. It's a way of learning to live in parish health. And to do that, you've got to be thinking about it. You can't set it aside and just be reactive. That's what I meant. Father? It's good to see you, Father.
I know, it's great to see you too, Father. I just keep on coming back for more. I was there in Beaverton, and I listened to other talks he's given. He helped me out with some emailing and different conversations. And what really hit me today about what you were saying about parish health was how it's something you do with a leadership team.
Right.
And then I was reflecting that this idea of keeping your eyes on the goal of living in Christ, and these are the things that make for parish health. It's like you said before, it's a lot like confession, right? You're going, which that raises the question. You said, don't ask how am I doing, but let me say that you can address that secondarily. I'm going, okay, so basically what I'm doing as a parish leader, and I've only been a parish leader for less than 2 years now, so I really shouldn't even be here because I should just be learning very basic things. Anyway, as a parish leader, I'm saying, okay, I go to confession, and I've been an Orthodox Christian for about 20 years. I think I'm just ready to learn how to confess. Maybe I'll be saying that for the rest of my life. But now I'm saying, okay, to my parish leader, let's go to confession together. And let's look at how we're doing on all these things.
Yeah.
And so as much as I'm buying into those four things as far as parish health, I also need to think, how do I, grow that kind of trust and that kind of a community that I have with my leaders, that we're willing to expose everything that we're doing and admit that, wow, I'm spending 50% of my time on something that's not essential.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about how I do that yet, so I just wanted to comment on that.
I think I got your question, so if you need to pop up and redirect, it's okay. I'm going to give you two images. What's that? What is that? It's triangle. What's that? Circle. Almost every parish priest I know thinks this is how you lead a parish. Every hierarch I know thinks that's how he leads a metropolis. As long as you're like this, you will not get trust, you will not get honesty, you will not get vulnerability. When you get this, you will. We as parish leaders have to operate in circles. Think about the icon of the mystical supper. It's not a straight table. That's Da Vinci's vision. Our tradition shows a curve, right? It's conciliar. Now, we give voice to conciliarity all the time, but we don't live conciliarity, right? And I think, forgive me for saying it, but I think the Roman Catholic Church lives more synodally than we do. They have a college of bishops. They actively seek the input of their laity, and they implement what they have to say. So I think as parish leaders, if we're going to grow a team, if we're going to elicit trust and vulnerability and honesty, then we have to make it a circle. We have to stand side by side. Now, this isn't saying that you're not a proistamenos, that you don't stand first in your parish, but that's an office. I don't think it's necessarily a role. And if we were to break it down in other talks, I've talked about how often do we lead from up front? It's like less than 5% of the time, right? We should be embedded leaders, right? Is that answering your question, Father?
Probably it is. I think I have to
Ingest it a little bit.
digest a little bit the circle.
Email me and I'll send you a whole excerpt on the circle versus triangle concept, Okay?
Yeah. But let me make it over-determinate, make it overly particular. Do I have to convince, I already got it wrong, but do I have to see this happen that my parish leaders are willing to be vulnerable with me and with each other and say, you know what, maybe I just have to enter into the possibility that I'm in the way of this being a healthy parish.
Yeah, I talk about that in another daddy model parishes. You do need to get out of the way. Yeah. Great question. Father?
I'm going to ask Father Andrew to be the last
Okay,
question.
thank you,
Father
Stacy.
Andrew will be available for discussion the rest of the evening.
Father Evan, you referenced that Orthodox Christianity has, especially in America, has a mindset of preservation or of renewal.
Right.
And after your presentation, it's clear that we need to regain the empire state of mind that the Orthodox Church has historically had through its entire existence. What do you see the American Orthodox Church being, if there was such a thing?
Wow, that's a big question. You asked what do I think the American Orthodox Church... I think, Father, to some degree we are starting to approach an answer to that question, but in many ways we haven't even started to answer that question, to become orthodoxy in America, right? One of the things that we tend to do is we tend to experiment and then abandon. So I love to tell the lighthouse story, like lighthouses getting established, and lighthouses were set up to save shipwrecked people. And eventually these lighthouses and life-saving stations became private clubs. And the private club no longer liked the fact that wet and bedraggled shipwrecked people were being brought into their nicely groomed clubs. So they would stop their life-saving activities, and then a new club would start. This is true. I don't know if you know this. So all along the East Coast, there's all these yacht clubs, basically. Well, they basically started as life-saving stations. In our American Orthodox context, there's a little bit of that going on. We've established these communities for the purpose of saving souls, but we've quickly adopted other priorities. And so the identity itself, the central identity, the essential identity, hasn't remained intact. So then we glob onto something else, and so it's this patchwork. It's this kind of quilt. It's sort of like the Archdiocese is a network of independent diners. You know, you go to one, you get a good meal, and they charge you a fair price. Another one, they steal your wallet, and you get food poisoning. Is that offensive? You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have a consistent view. We don't have a consistent vision that what the Archdiocese is, what each of our parishes is the representation of Christ's church here. And that our essential mission is to save souls. And when we keep that essential and we don't get distracted by the specific, then I think our identity, it's not something we have to find. It'll emerge, right? Thank you.